The teaching text today is 1 Samuel 9, 1 through 2, and Matthew 5, 1 through 10. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Apiah of Benjamin. Kish had a son named Saul, a handsome young man, as could be found anywhere in Israel, and he was a head taller than anyone else. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and began to teach them, and he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of the righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." This is the word of the Lord. Each word we share. You may be seated.
We have a closing tradition where the last guest leaves a question for the next, not knowing who they're leaving it for. And the question that's left for you: in a world with so many challenges, what can we do to restore hope and trigger engagement?
Give people a real basis for hope that transcends this world. And the only place I know where to find that is in Christ and in Christianity.
John, thank you. One of the most compelling arguments for God that you've presented and your way of seeing the world and being is not actually necessarily anything you've written in your books, or not necessarily anything you've said. It is actually you. And you have a certain peace and contentment that I rarely see in people that I interview, but I often see, and I've almost always seen, in the Christians that I've interviewed. And this is a interesting phenomenon for me. I interviewed Wesley Huff recently. Do you know Wesley Huff?
Yes.
He was the same
Canadian.
as you. Yeah.
Wesley's a bright cookie.
Yeah, he gave me the same feeling as you, just like feels like a really happy person, very sort of content, rounded,
There are many of us.
Yeah, but it seems to be a trend that, a lot of the Christian apologists that I've interviewed have that anchoring that so many of us are looking for.
Robert Cole is a professor at Harvard University. He's an author. He's a thought leader, I think, in the education space. He's written a lot of books. He wrote about a specific student that he had at Harvard University who left Harvard University. She was an undergrad. She came from a family that didn't have any means, didn't have any money. They didn't have any pedigree. She got in based on the standards of Harvard. A lot of students that get into Harvard, their mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, great-grandma went to Harvard. They're from means, they're from money, they're from a great education, and this girl was the exact opposite. So she didn't have a wealth of money to draw from her family, and so she, to make her way through college, she became one of the people who would clean the dorms. And as she was cleaning the dorms, one of her fellow students whose family had money, means, was bright, had a great education, would proposition her when she was cleaning the dorms. She got so frustrated, she would just keep refusing. She said, "What is this person doing?" She even took a couple of required classes at Harvard University on moral reasoning and being a person of ethics, and that other student who kept propositioning her got great grades in the classes that were all about what it means to live with morality and be a good person. And she finally got so frustrated, she said, I don't want to do this anymore. It just wouldn't let up. It was unrelenting. And so she came in to Professor Robert Cole, who's, as I understand it, not necessarily a person of any faith, just a very bright person, influential. And she said something really, really interesting that we're going to talk about in this series. I'm going to quote it here. Dallas Willard quotes it in his book, The Divine Conspiracy. Here's what she said. I've been taking all these philosophy courses, and we talk about what's true, what's important, what's good. Well, how do you teach people to be good? What's the point of knowing good if you don't keep trying to become a good person? We're going to enter into a series that's about that. How do you become a good person? What does that even mean, and how do you get there? That's the series that we're starting today. So I'm so glad that you're here. Now, let me just kind of give you the roadmap of what's going to happen this morning so you can go with me here. I want to talk to you, just introduce this series, but I just want to describe for you why I think that we need a map. We're missing a map in our culture, and why we need a map. And then I want to give you 2 steps. And in fact, every week of this series, it'll be kind of a version of the same 2 steps. But I want to give you 2 steps that will move you closer to being a good person. So let's start. Let's get going here. Why do we need a map for understanding what it means in our world today about being a good person? Why do we need a map? Well, every human system that you're a part of, every human system that you know, has some sort of answer. Every culture around the world has some sort of answer to the question, how do you become a good person? And usually it's some combination of your background, what was put into you, the values that you have, the skills that you have. It's the things that you want to build on, where you come from and your values you want to build around, and then the skills, the things you want to move forward with. I'll give you a few examples just so you can stay with me here. Let's just say you're in the corporate world. The background that you're looking for in the corporate world is, number one, you either have a degree or you have some experience in the job that you're going to be doing in the corporate world. The values of the corporate world, there are many. One of the main drivers of the corporate world is, hey, listen, we want you to take this job. You've got the right experience, but do you want to make a lot of money? And if you're motivated, you can make a lot of money doing it. And maybe you want to move up. And then the skills they're looking for, maybe emotional quotient. It'd be nice if you worked with people with an emotional intelligence. And then people who can get things done. It'd be great if you could get both of those. Maybe you only work with a person who has one of those or neither. That's very frustrating, isn't it? But the corporate world offers an answer. Like, how do you be a good person? Well, here you go. If you're in education, it's similar. You need a background, a degree, some training in pedagogy, how the human person learns and puts pieces together and makes sense of the world. And the value they're looking for in the educational system is, well, you got to have something in you that desires to make a difference and pass something on to the next generation. And the skill would be, hopefully, that you like kids. How many of you have had a teacher who did not like kids, right? You're like, maybe wrong profession for you. And then you somehow maybe have some classroom management skills. It applies everywhere. Like if you wanted to join a gang, it's the same thing. The background is, hey, you're from the streets like us. You're hustling. You're trying to survive out here. It's desperate. The value is you want to belong. You want to fit in somehow. The skill is that you'll just do whatever you're told. There's some sense of what a good person looks like in each of those settings. And if we could spell it out, all the better if you're in that setting. Here's what a good doctor looks like. Here's what a good teacher looks like. It's just that it's so easy to be disrupted. Maybe you know this. When Google was started, Google the company, they're one of the $1 trillion market cap companies, one of the handful of companies that basically own the world economy now. And maybe you know this, but the original motto for Google was, don't be evil. Like, hey, we're going to have some power, we're going to have some influence, and we're going to do something in the world. They kind of saw where they were headed and where culture was headed and how they could provide the technology for it. And they said, hey, what if, it was their attempt to say, let's be good people. Like, let's not be evil. And now you could go find a multitude of people writing about their experience inside Google's culture saying, well, they've kind of missed the boat. So how better than, what's a good doctor, what's a good teacher, how do you make a good person? How do you do that? The problem is that we don't have a map for becoming a good person. We don't share as a culture a map. So here's what this series is. This series is a map for how you can become a good person. I think I don't have to say to you that what we're really kind of desperately in need of in our culture is a lot of good people. I don't think I have to make the case for you, but in case you're not paying attention, we need a map. We need a lot of good people in the world around us. Now, cards on the table. I just don't know if you want to look around at the building, the architecture, where you're seated, where you're seated. You're in a Christian church building where you're surrounded by a lot of Christian people. You may have walked in the door with this conception. You may carry this conception as a Christian person, but your conception of religion is, here's what religion is. It's about a set of beliefs that you have to adopt, like some dogma or doctrine, whether you want to or not. And so you become this kind of automaton who repeats religious statements that don't have really any connection to reality, but you believe them. If that's what you walked in the door with, I just want to tell you that's actually a mistaken understanding of what at least Christian faith is. I won't speak for any other religion, but for Christian faith, because actually Jesus' specialty was making, and is still today, making good people. If you are familiar with Jesus and with his words, the opening line that he would give to anybody who came into him, he would just say 3 words that just painted the picture about where you would go if you were to follow Jesus. He would just say, hey, come follow me. Come follow me. In other words, I will show you how to be a good person. I think it's probably important to show you a bit of the track record of people who've actually taken those words from Jesus seriously throughout history. I'm not going to give you a whole history lesson, but just some familiar figures, maybe some not as familiar as others. Maybe one of the most famous in the last half century or so would be Mother Teresa of Calcutta. If you know her story, she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She, I think, passed away in the 90s sometime. Still a well-regarded and respected woman, but in the name of Jesus, she moved to Calcutta, India. She wasn't Indian, moved to Calcutta, India, a desperately poor place, and she would work with people who had diseases, who would be thrown onto the street. If you know, India has a caste system, and she would go work with the people at the bottom of the system, and she would minister to them, and she would meet their needs. She started hospitals. She had a home for the dying, so she said no human being made in God's image should ever die alone. And so she has this unbelievable reputation of doing good in the world. And the place she got that from is following Jesus. Like, the track record of following Jesus results in someone like a Mother Teresa. Another person his name's Frank Laubach. I'm going to show you here a picture of a stamp. He's the only Christian missionary that was ever put on an American stamp. He was born in the 1800s. He went to the Philippines, and he saw that there was a lot of injustice, and he saw that there were people in desperate poverty, and he realized that one of the reasons was because they couldn't read. And so, in the name of Jesus, he's a devout follower of Jesus, Frank Laubach started a literacy program that literally it transformed a lot of the Philippines, but something like 60 million people were taught to read because this man took the words of Jesus seriously and changed the world of his day. You can read some of his writings. Frank Laubach's worth your time. Why? He took seriously the words of Jesus to follow him. Another person, you may not have studied this person, Florence Nightingale. She was a follower of Jesus, and she worked with medicine, and when a war was happening, and she saw the conditions that they were treating the soldiers in, and she was around the time that you were figuring out bacteria and how that all works, and so she instituted all kinds of changes so that people would be treated well and treated with dignity and cared for. and she's considered kind of the mother of modern nursing as a result of that. That didn't come from just this thing inside of her. She was a devout follower of Jesus and decided to put into practice, I'm going to be a good person in the world. Then one of my heroes, if you're here, you hear me talk about him all the time, John Wesley, who was the most famous man in England. He was an Anglican clergyman. He traveled 250,000 miles on horseback. And at his time and day, he was the most famous man in all of England because of his understanding of the message of Jesus and his belief in the message of Jesus and how the message of Jesus could transform a person and make them into a good person. Many people credit him with putting the impetus inside William Wilberforce, who was able to negotiate slavery out of England without England going into a civil war like we did here. And a lot of people trace that to the message of John Wesley. He was this incredible man who said, I'm going to follow Jesus. One of my favorite quotes from him, can I read it to you? It's beautiful. I love it. I want you to stay with me as I read it. Someone came to one time and he said, what are you trying to do? What's your message? Where do you want to take people? Tell me what you're about. And here's what he said. He asked, what would I do with people? I would make them, listen at his description of someone who's a good person. I would make them virtuous and happy, easy in themselves, and useful to others. Where would I lead them? To heaven, to God, the judge, the lover of all, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. What religion do I preach? The religion of love, the law of kindness brought to light by the gospel. What's this good for? To make all who receive it enjoy God in themselves, to make them like God, lovers of all, contented in their lives, and crying out at their death in calm assurance, O grave, where is your victory? Thanks be to God who gives me victory through Jesus Christ my Lord. He believed that following Jesus made you a good person. You are an example of people who are good people. Like with many congregations, you've built all these wells in Malawi, Africa, and you've made a difference for literally thousands and thousands of people in one of the most desperately poor countries in the world. Joe Rogan, one of the biggest podcasts in the world, he had Wesley Huff, that you heard John Lennox reference a little earlier, a Christian scholar, on his podcast, and it seems like Joe Rogan's been on this journey toward faith. And he said a similar thing to Stephen Bartlett, who has maybe the number one podcast in the world, most listened to podcast in the world. He said, I meet these Christians, and they're the kindest people that I meet. And then you heard John Lennox, how Stephen Bartlett described John Lennox, who's the Oxford professor of mathematics, or retired now at Oxford University, a brilliant, brilliant man who is deeply committed to the way of Jesus and making sense of it from a rational perspective and actually putting into practice. And you heard what Stephen Bartlett said. He said, you have something that we don't. Now, you may hear that list and you go, well, are you saying I have to be a Mother Teresa to be a good person? Because I don't think that's going to happen. No, I'm not trying to say that. What am I trying to say? I'm just trying to show you that Jesus' way of going about making someone into a good person works. I'm going to give you a word. We're going to talk about this word all throughout the series, just a little bit today, but more as we go through the series. I want to give you a word for a good person. The Bible has this word as its descriptor of what a good person is like, and I don't want you to be thrown off by it, because you're going to have an assumption when you see the word about what it means, and I especially if you're a Christian, and especially if you're not a Christian, here's the word that the Bible uses to describe a good person. It's the word holy. For Jesus, that's a person who has a deep, intense love for God, a deep understanding of God's love for you, and out of that, then you are able to love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's a holy person. That's a good person. Now, sometimes as Christians, what we do with words like this, words in the Bible, is we sometimes forget the Bible isn't throwing around words disconnected from reality. Like, here's this other category. The Bible is actually trying to paint a vision for your real daily life and the kind of person that you can be. So this is a descriptor word about the kind of person that you can be. And if you're on the other side and you think that's a word that means out of touch, or people who think they're better than other people, I just want to suggest, don't you know the good people around you? Don't they have kind of, I wouldn't use the word holy, but kind of a reverence about them, this kind of a joy and kind of a warmth that you go, I would like that, please. I don't know what you have, but I'd like that. That's what Stephen Bartlett was trying to say. You have something intangible, and how do I get that inside of me? I pastored this gentleman A number of years ago, when we lived in St. Louis, and his name was Joe. I looked for a picture. I couldn't find a picture. I've told you about Joe before a few years ago. But he would come into the office a couple times a week, and he was in his late 80s. He had bad knees, and it would take him maybe 4 hours, and he would take all the trash out of the building. He would park his car by the door, and then he would put all the trash in the trunk, and he would take trips out. And then he would sit in the office and he would talk to me, and he was the most encouraging person. He had a second grade education. He'd been a pipe fitter all of his life, but he radiated joy and warmth. There was this reverence about him when he would come in. I just loved when he would come, and he loved doing the trash. And I don't know how many times I've prayed since then, oh God, could you make me like Joe? Could you make me like Joe? I just want you to consider that one of the purposes of your life is to become, if you're taking notes, a genuinely good person. That's actually one of the purposes of your life. There's other reasons you're here, but I just want to suggest to you, if you've never considered it, that one of the purposes of your life is that you, over the course of your life and all the things you go about and happen to you and you don't like and you do like, all of those things combined, you're to take that material and figure out how to become a genuinely good person. So here's what it means, is you then become a good person for the people around you, a good dad, a good employer, a good employee, a good friend, a good boss, a good neighbor. And then it does something for your own good because you have a sense of self-respect. I ask this question sometimes around here, like when you leave the room, do people say about you, boy, that's a good person? We hosted a missionary on Wednesday night, and we do that kind of frequently because you have for years supported the work of missions around the world. It's a really beautiful thing. I was talking to the missionary, and I was referencing some of you. And it was so easy and natural for me to just say, they're such a good person. I named some of you. If you felt like I was talking about you, I was. I was like, they're just such a good person. They're just such a good person. Why am I saying that? Well, someday you will leave the room. You will leave the room. Are you following? Will people say about you, he was such a good person? She was such a good person. Just imagine. Let me paint the picture here. Just imagine for a second that for the next several weeks, everybody listening to the sound of my voice took a deep interest in being a genuinely good person. And over the next 4 weeks, you walked into the water of, okay, how might I be a good person? Am I a good person? Am I a good person to my family? Am I a good person where I work, my neighbor? Wouldn't that, just people here online, wouldn't that rising tide kind of lift all boats around us? Maybe the city of Wichita would go, there was an uptick. In August, school started, everybody hated school, but then there was this kind of uptick. I don't know what happened or what transpired, but something lifted all the boats. Wouldn't that go a long way to curing what ails us? Yeah. So how? Well, you need a map. So two steps. You ready? We're gonna go a little fast here, and then we're gonna. They call it when you're speaking, landing the plane. The plane's gonna drop out of the sky from 10,000 feet, and it's gonna be beautiful. You're gonna love it. 2 steps. Number one, you got to examine you. Number one, you got to start with you. You got to examine you. You got to examine the story of your life. Every week, I'm going to give you a story. We're going to look at some stories in 1 Samuel, some famous Bible stories, and then the step is going to come from the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And the goal is that you would see yourself a little more clearly every week, and then you would also see the path forward. And so I just want to give you these stories from the scriptures because they're paradigm shaping. They help us see ourselves. And the story we're going to look at here just real briefly is the story of Saul, who was the first king of Israel in the Old Testament. And what I want you to do is I hope you can take his story and use it as a lens to examine your story, because here's why. Saul's a picture of someone who is working to be a good person, but it just doesn't go so great. Now, I'm not trying to say, you're doomed, good luck, you're going to be like Saul. I want you to see something specific, because there's something he doesn't get, that if you don't get, you can't get there to being a good person. It's the starting place of being a good person. So here's Saul. Here's the context of his life. He's in the middle of what we could call nation building, and the people of Israel come to Samuel, who's the prophet, and he's been judging the people of Israel, doing the ruler, administrative kinds of things for the nation of Israel after they've come out of Egypt. And they come to him one day, and they're like, well, listen, we've watched all these other countries, and they have a king, and we don't have a king. And so they say to him in 1 Samuel 8, verse 5, you're old, your sons don't follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us. In other words, we want one. We want to be like all of the other nations around us. And Samuel's like, this is probably not a great idea. And so Saul's story is right inside of that. The people of Israel are wanting a king. God is actually not happy with them. It's like, this is not a good decision because those nations, they move away from God. And man, if you get that. And so that's how Saul's story starts out. If you heard it when we read it in 1 Samuel 9, 1 through 12, maybe you picked up the kind of three things about Saul. He came from a family. His father was a man of standing. In other words, his father had land. His father had property. His father had money. He came from money. He was handsome. All of the ladies would have been like, check out Saul. Look at it. He's a hottie. He's a baddie. I don't know what word to use. I don't know, whatever. The text says he was a head taller than everybody. So here's this, he's wealthy, he's incredibly good looking, he's tall of stature. It's like, and people have these expectations, they're looking for a king, and he just kind of gets pushed onto the stage before he's actually ready. There's this scene in chapter 10 where they go looking for him because they're like, we're going to make you the king. And he's in wrestling with his own insecurities. And verse 21 of chapter 10, when they looked for him, he was not to be found. So they inquired further of the Lord, has the man come here yet? And the Lord said, he's hidden himself among the supplies. He's like in the janitor's closet. Go look there. And sure enough, that's where he is. He's in this pressure cooker. Now you could see all that. Here's this wealthy guy, he's handsome, he's has the stature of someone you think a leader is supposed to look like, and maybe depending on your perspective, you might see it one way. If you were on Team Optimistic, you'd be like, oh, hey, look, you're looking for a king? This guy kind of fits the bill. He's not ready? Well, hey, no one's ever ready for what they're about to. Just throw him in. No big deal. Who is? And if you're on Team Optimistic, you might go, well, come on. And that's what the people did. If you're on Team Cautious, you might go, okay, so this is somebody, got a lot of money, he's really good looking, those things do not equate to character or moral values or any rootedness of any want. You're trying to force him to be the king, and everybody around us has this unhealthy desire to change our culture, and this seems like a recipe for trouble, and Team Cautious would win the day of assessment about the story because that's exactly what happens. Now, we're just zeroing in on what I hope you can see from Saul's life as a lens for yours. On the journey to become a good person, you're gonna go through two things. You're gonna deal with the things that are inside of you, and you're gonna deal with the things that are around you. And if you don't pay attention to those things, they can get you. Saul on the inside, he's insecure, he's ignorant. The record of the story of Saul's life is that he remains that way all the way through the narrative, all the way to the end of his life, and he's incredibly gifted, but all of those things, because Saul doesn't find the one thing he needs to become a good person, go bad in a lot of ways. And then around Saul, all this stuff happening. The whole country's not satisfied. There's anxiety and fear, and they're putting pressure on the religious establishment to fix this for them. There's all these expectations that are being put on top of Saul's insecurities. And the story of Saul, if you know it, is that he ultimately fails. He's not a good person at the end. At the end of the story, he's a tyrant. Now, I'm, again, not trying to tell you you're going to end up like Saul. I'm trying to say you have to pay attention to you. What's happening inside of you right now? What are the things that are in you gifts you have, fears you have, anxieties that you have? And then there are things happening around you. There are forces that are pressing on you, and you got to pay attention. Now, I want you to see, I don't want you to miss Saul's fundamental flaw. Here it is. He is never able to secure the source of his life. He never can. He never finds the anchor. He never gets in touch with the deep thing. So he never has the source that he needs to be a good person. Jesus had this metaphor. He said that people are like trees. He said, you know them by their fruit. You look on the, apple tree and you see a juicy apple. Oh, that's a good tree. You see rotten fruit, something's going on the inside. So whatever is in them, Jesus is saying, eventually comes out of them. So pay attention to what's happening on the inside of you. Now, go a layer deeper, because what do we know about trees? They don't exist by themselves. They draw their life from a greater source than them. They secure their source from outside of themselves. They tap into the living root of the earth that God put into creation that makes trees work, and they secured their source outside. See, Saul never did that. He was a tree that never figured out the roots. But you have to figure out the roots. Who's the root? How do I attach to the root? Or you don't ever get there. Now, if you're feeling a bit lost, that's okay, because Saul's story is the story of the human condition. This is your battle. This is my battle. We have stuff inside of us and around us, and and this is an invitation to look at your story and to name it. And if you just do that, you will be ahead of where Saul ever was. Here's the second step. And it's foundational. It's from Jesus if you're going to be a good person. And it's the title of the message today. It's you've got to secure your source. You've got to secure your source. What do I mean? Well, Jesus, when he starts his teaching, probably the basic summary of Jesus' teaching is in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and we're going to look at it through this series, the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, describes what human beings are like. He describes what God is like. He describes what a good person is like. And the Sermon on the Mount starts with maybe the most famous passage, one of, at least in the Bible, known as the Beatitudes. It's this list of blesseds, and Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for there's the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger." And it's just this long list. It's on the screen for you. You can see the long list and read it there. What's Jesus saying? Well, I'll tell you what many people assume. They assume that what Jesus is doing is he's giving us a ladder, right? He's like, here's the ladder that you got to climb if you want to have a relationship with God. So I got to climb up the ladder to God. I got to see myself as poor in spirit. Like I got to really feel like I suck. And then I gotta mourn. I gotta be really sad. I gotta feel awful about myself, and so on, right? And the idea is that, okay, God's at the top. I'm down here at the bottom, and God is up here at the top. And if I can climb the ladder in the right order, then I will reach God. That's how I secure my source. I climb up the ladder. Now, I guess I can see, I've heard, and this, by the way, I've heard sermons with this exact illustration, and they're wrong, okay? And I'm just wrong. You're welcome. So I can see, I understand though, right? Because we do have to have a kind of a poverty of spirit. Like a lot of us are middle class in spirit. We don't think we need anything. We're fine. We don't need God. When you do see who you are and you see the brokenness of your condition, you will mourn. You will be. It is better to lift yourself up and to take a lower place. I mean, there is climbing involved in the Christian life for sure. But this is what I'm trying to show you is this is a version of what religion is. Religion is, I'm down here. God is up there, and if I'm going to reach God, then I have to climb up the ladder. So the impetus is on little me to climb up the ladder so I can get to Creator God. And God is waiting patiently, tapping his fingers on the top of the ladder, waiting at the top for you to make it. So you think, I'm going to secure my source. I know what you're getting ready to tell me, Scott. To secure my source, I got to start climbing. I got to do better. I got to stop being a loser and stop being a failure. I got to start climbing, and I hope you make it. The message of Jesus is, in part, is to take that version and understanding of God, fold it up, and put it away. There's a better way to understand it. There's a better step. John, in his gospel, he says that when he's referencing Jesus, he says through Jesus, everything was made. He uses this Greek concept, the logos, the word. He's the divine mind behind everything that you see. And here at the start of his teaching, he's starting with who can be connected to God, whose roots can go down. And so instead of it being a ladder that we climb, it's a window that we see through. Because when you go all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, the creation account in Genesis chapter 1, the earth is formless, it's void, there's darkness hovering over the deep, there's chaos, and then out of the chaos, God speaks an original blessing onto the world and then creates you and speaks an original blessing onto you. And he uses this word. It's a potent word. It's lost a lot of its weight in our culture today, but it's a potent word all the way through the scriptures. And God announces the original blessing about you. Do you know what it is? It's that you are, say the word with me. You put it on the screen for me, Lauren? Say it with me out loud. Ready? Good. God announces you before anything else has happened. He says, he gives you an original blessing, and he says that you're good. Now, Genesis 3 happens next in the narrative, and human beings fall, because I know some of you are uncomfortable. You may be saying the original blessing. You're like, wait, Scott, original sin. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. There is a fundamental break in humans, and at the core level, we are a hot mess. But do you know why original sin is such a problem? Is because we weren't made originally by God broken. We were made with the original blessing of being good. If you're working to restore something, you restore it because of its original value. You're like, well, it was so valuable. I want to restore it back to its original value. And when we talk about sin and the fall, we're talking about falling away from our original blessing. Like, how can you be a good person if you don't know your original value and you're not tapped back into the God who spoke goodness into you in the first place? Because God originally created you to be a good person. This is part of your birthright and your purpose. It's not a mistake by God. So here at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, when he lists these Beatitudes, Dallas Willard says, that you're poor and he's announcing all the categories of people who thought they were outside of God, that you now are welcomed in. You're poor in spirit. You don't know anything about God. You don't know God from a hole in your head. You have no idea what religion means. You're trying to figure all this out. You're welcome. You're going through difficulty, you're mourning so many different things. You're mourning a person, you're mourning loss, it's just like that's the message of your whole life. You're just mourning all the time. Guess what? That doesn't exclude you. You're a meek person and you just can't ever quite establish yourself, and you just kind of stand at the back and nobody pays attention to you. You're welcome. You're the person who hungers and thirsts for things to be made right. You're always looking around at the world and going, that's wrong, and that's got to be fixed, and that's got to be fixed. And you wonder if there's a place for someone like who always cares about making the world a better place. You're welcome. You're a merciful person. You're a peacemaking person. You're a pure in heart person. Here's what Jesus is doing. He's saying that you are welcomed in. He is opening the door for you and saying, this is the start of being a good person, is you have to secure your source. And the source is the God who made you. See, we're Christians, and we worship a God who put himself on a cross. And the gospel is that on the cross, God secures your source. You were in your minds an enemy toward God. You didn't want anything to do with God. And he died for you while you were his enemy, and he absorbed on the cross the injustice of human evil. And it's this beautiful story in Luke chapter 24 when Jesus is on the cross, and you read the stories of how Jesus is treated unjustly, and all these things happen, and people throw their worst at Jesus. And if it was me, I'd be like, that person did that, and they said that, and that was wrong, and I'm justified. And Jesus just takes it. He absorbs it all. And he says some of the most beautiful words that only the creator of the ends of the earth and of you, who knows your original blessing and your original goodness, could say. He says, oh, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. What's he doing on the cross? He is securing your source. You are welcome in. If you try to be a tree by yourself without a rooted connection to the source, the God who made you and loved you and made you good, and yeah, you've gone through some stuff and there's mess in your life, but that is not a barrier because he sees your original value. Salvation is God restoring that been beginning the process of restoring you to your original value. You know when you know that about yourself, you now have the source to become a good person. Do you want that? I told you I was going to land the plane fast. That's the plane landing right there. There you go. Would you stand with me? I really get the sense that this is a very, for those of you who are letting it, it's like right close to the vest topic. You're like, oh man, if you could see the split inside of me and the struggle that I'm going through, I don't know. If that's you. This is for you. We're creating space here at the end of the service. These are benches. You can come pray. There's zero pressure. This is all of us in the room, by the way. Doesn't matter how long you've been in church. All of us in the room are still in progress. We're still a work in progress. We still got issues. We still have struggles. We still hurt. Life still gets difficult. It still gets hard. Everybody in the room is in need. The best person you think is in the room here, they are in need too. So it's equal. We'll have a couple folks down here, and they'll come down and be available to pray with you. If you want someone to pray with you, they'll pray with you, anoint you with oil. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been going through something, and then an offer like this is made, and I want someone to come down and pray with me. And I'm like, could you pray with me? Could you anoint? I just need God. I need God's Spirit. That's you. We'll sing here in a second. You can respond. We'll send you and close you. It's just space for you to respond. I just don't want you to walk out and miss it and be like, well, that was interesting. What's for lunch? No. God who made you, knows you from the beginning and the end, knows your value. He's your source. He's who you're searching. That's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for. Let me pray for you. God, we receive you, the source. You are the only uncreated one. From the beginning to the end, you see our lives. We're our short, wildflower lives that grow up for a little bit and then are not here. You see all of our comings and our goings, and you see and understand and know what you created us to be, the original blessing that you spoke into us. God, we are so much more aware of our original failures. We somehow let that be the defining thing about us, but you have a different definition. We receive the definition you gave to us on the cross, that we can be your sons and daughters. That we're in. We're not climbing a ladder. We're running into our Father's arms. So gladly we come in. Thank you. Thank you. I pray this in your name. All God's people said.